Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Alex. Breaking up with an abusive partner doesn't always end the abuse. Sometimes it just transforms into stalking and harassment that follows you into every new relationship until you find someone strong enough or figure out a way to stand and fight back. I'd been with Jennifer for 2 years when I finally ended our relationship, but it took another year and a half of escalating harassment before I was truly free of her. 2 years of what had started as seemingly normal dating, but had gradually morphed into something toxic and controlling that had nearly broken me mentally before I'd found the strength to leave. We met when we were both living in Denver and working in different professional sectors. I was in consulting, and she worked in event planning for a hospitality company. From the first time we met, we had good chemistry, and we started dating within weeks. The first few months of the relationship had been fine. We had a few disagreements here and there, but nothing raised immediate red flags. Jennifer was attentive, affectionate, and interested in my life. We'd spend weekends together, have regular date nights, and maintain what felt like a healthy, early relationship. But gradually, subtle warning signs started appearing that I rationalized or minimized rather than recognizing as problems. Jennifer became increasingly interested in monitoring my activities. She would want to know where I was at all times, would text constantly throughout the day, expecting immediate responses, and would get upset if I didn't reply quickly enough or if my explanations of what I was doing weren't detailed enough. She started expressing jealousy about my female friends and coworkers, making comments about women I interacted with professionally, and would question why I needed to have coffee with a female colleague or why a woman had liked my social media post. The jealousy escalated into control. She'd want to check my phone regularly, would go through my messages and social media interactions looking for evidence of interest in other women. She would casually accuse me of lying or hiding things when she found completely innocent conversations. The verbal aggression came next. When Jennifer was upset about something, real or imagined, she'd lash out verbally. She would call me names, would attack my character, and say cruel things designed to hurt me emotionally. Then, when she learns the facts later, she'd apologize, say she'd been stressed or emotional, that she hadn't meant it, and that I'd provoked her by doing whatever that triggered her jealousy or anger. I'd accept the apologies and modify my behavior to avoid triggering Jennifer. I would distance myself from female friends to reduce her jealousy, and would check in constantly to ease her anxiety about my whereabouts. But instead of helping, all of this enabled the abuse to continue and intensify. My accommodating her controlling behavior taught her that it worked, that I'd change myself to manage her emotions. By about a year into the relationship, I was constantly walking on eggshells, monitoring every interaction to avoid upsetting Jennifer, avoiding situations that might trigger her jealousy, and living in a state of low-level anxiety about when the subsequent explosion would happen. My friends started commenting that I changed, that I seemed stressed and withdrawn, and that they never saw me anymore without Jennifer being present or monitoring the interaction. I'd make excuses and argue that relationships required compromise. I told them Jennifer just needed reassurance because of past hurts, and that things would improve once she felt more secure. But things didn't improve. Instead, they got worse. The constant monitoring became suffocating. Jennifer would show up unannounced at my apartment or my workplace, would track my location through my phone, would question discrepancies between where I'd said I'd be and where my phone showed I was. The verbal aggression became more frequent and more vicious. Jennifer would explode over ever smaller perceived slights, would rage at me for hours over things like not texting back quickly enough or talking too long to a female barista. I started feeling like I was breaking down mentally. I realized about 18 months into the relationship that I was in an abusive situation. That Jennifer's behavior wasn't normal relationship jealousy or stress. It was control and emotional abuse. I decided to end things even though I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't continue living like this. I waited for a relatively calm moment, then told Jennifer clearly that the relationship wasn't working and I was ending it. I kept my tone calm and firm, trying not to give room for arguments or negotiations. Jennifer refused to accept it, saying we weren't done, that I couldn't leave her, and that I'd come back because I'd realized I couldn't do better. I maintained my position, said the relationship was over, and I needed her to respect that decision. She alternated between begging and threatening, between tears and rage, between promising to change and warning me I'd regret leaving. I left her apartment that evening and immediately blocked her on everything. Phone number, social media, messaging apps. Cut off every avenue of communication. I thought that would be the end of it. That Jennifer would be angry and hurt but would eventually move on, as people do after breakups. I was catastrophically wrong. Within days, Jennifer started attempting to contact me through various means. Fake social media accounts that would try to message or follow me. Showing up at places she knew I frequented, my gym, my favorite coffee shop, the grocery store near my apartment. She would be calling from unknown numbers or from friends' phones. I'd answer, not recognizing the number, and she'd start talking before I could hang up. I ignored all of it. Hung up immediately when I realized it was her. Blocked new fake accounts as they appeared and left places when she showed up. I figured she'd exhaust herself eventually, that the lack of response from me would make her give up and move on. I focused on rebuilding my life. I spent more time at the gym working out stress and rebuilding confidence that had been eroded during the relationship. I reconnected with friends I'd been isolated from, threw myself into work, and tried to heal from 2 years of emotional abuse. After about 3 months of being single and dealing with Jennifer's sporadic contact attempts, I met someone new, a graphic designer who worked for an advertising agency. We'd met at a professional networking event and exchanged numbers. We went on a first date, and it went well. We had a comfortable interaction, with light chemistry that suggested potential for something more. We set up a second date for the following weekend. I was optimistic that I was ready to start dating again. Like maybe I could have a normal relationship with someone who wasn't abusive. But this new lady stopped responding to messages after our first date. She just ghosted me completely. Texts went unanswered, and plans for the second date dissolved into silence. I was disappointed, but tried not to overthink it. I figured maybe the chemistry hadn't been as mutual as I'd thought, that she decided after reflection that she wasn't interested. I saw it as just typical dating rejection. I took my time before trying again. I spent several more weeks focusing on myself, continued working out, advancing at work, and rebuilding social connections. About 2 months after the situation with this new lady, I met another woman, a teacher at an elementary school. We'd met through mutual friends at a group dinner. She was friendly, kind, and soft-spoken. Someone I genuinely clicked with immediately. We went on a few casual dates. Coffee, lunch, a movie. Building a connection slowly. I felt comfortable with her, like this might develop into something tangible. One evening, we had dinner plans at a nice restaurant downtown. The place had a relaxed atmosphere. We were talking comfortably, sharing stories, and laughing at each other's jokes. Then Jennifer walked into the restaurant. I saw her immediately and felt my stomach drop. I desperately hoped she wouldn't notice me, or, if she did, would see I was with someone and leave us alone. She noticed and walked directly to our table. Jennifer approached with this fake smile, greeted me like she still had rights to my time and attention, like we were still together or still friends rather than exes who hadn't spoken in months. She touched my shoulder familiarly, raised her eyebrows at the lady I was on a date with in this assessing way. She made comments about how nice it was to finally meet her, implying she'd heard about Michelle from me, which was a complete lie. The entire interaction lasted less than a minute, but the atmosphere at our table changed completely. Michelle looked uncomfortable, confused, and uncertain about what was happening. Jennifer left after her brief intrusion. Michelle and I tried to continue our date, but the ease was gone. She asked who that was. I explained it was my ex, tried to downplay it as a coincidental encounter. But the damage was done. Over the following days, this second lady's communication changed. Her messages got shorter and less frequent. She started avoiding calls, canceled our next planned date with a vague excuse about being busy. After several days of this, I asked directly if something was wrong, whether Jennifer's appearance at the restaurant had bothered her. She finally admitted that Jennifer had contacted her privately and had sent threatening messages. She added that Jennifer had shared details about her life that she shouldn't have had access to and had warned her to stay away from me. This second lady said she was terrified, that she wanted nothing to do with this situation, and she couldn't date someone whose ex was this unstable and threatening. I apologized, tried to explain that Jennifer was my problem to handle, not hers, that I'd deal with my ex, and she didn't need to be involved. But this lady had already decided she was done and wasn't interested in being part of whatever drama Jennifer was creating. That's when realization hit me fully. This was why the first lady had ghosted after our first date. Jennifer must have found out somehow and had threatened or scared her away before our second date. I saw the pattern forming. Jennifer wasn't just harassing me. She was actively sabotaging any attempt I made to date other people. She was threatening women I showed interest in and was ensuring I stayed single because if she couldn't have me, nobody could. My stomach dropped. My ex wasn't just struggling to let go. She was actively stalking me and the women I dated. I decided to confront Jennifer directly, to try to end this madness before it escalates further. I found her at her apartment one evening, told her calmly but firmly that she needed to stop, that we were over, that I was moving on, that she needed to do the same. Jennifer's response was cold and matter-of-fact. Told me I was hers, that no other girl would have me, that she'd make sure of that. She said it without emotion, as if stating a simple fact rather than issuing a threat. I realized then that reasoning with her was pointless, that she'd moved past hurt feelings into something obsessive and dangerous. I went to the police station the next day, filed a report about the harassment and stalking, explained the pattern, the fake accounts, the showing up at places I frequented, the threats to women I dated. The officers I spoke with didn't take it seriously. They said there hadn't been any physical attack, that this sounded like jealousy rather than real danger, and I should just block her and move on. They filed a report because I insisted, but made clear they weren't going to take any concrete action. No restraining order. No investigation, just a piece of paper documenting that I'd complained. I left the police station feeling helpless and frustrated. The system that was supposed to protect people from harassment didn't seem equipped to deal with situations like mine, where the threat was emotional and social rather than physical. Jennifer's campaign continued and intensified. She started targeting any woman she suspected I might be talking to. Female coworkers mentioned receiving strange messages about their relationship with me. Female friends began pulling back, saying they didn't want to deal with drama for my ex. Women I talked to casually were warned to stay away from me. That dating me came with crazy ex drama they didn't want any part of. Word spread through my social circle. People started viewing me differently, like I was somehow the problem, or at minimum came with baggage that wasn't worth dealing with. My female friends distanced themselves to avoid Jennifer's harassment. My dating life became non-existent because Jennifer would either threaten away any woman I showed interest in or would hear about the situation and decide it wasn't worth the hassle. I felt cornered, embarrassed, and completely helpless. Jennifer had effectively isolated me socially and romantically without ever physically threatening me. She had created a situation where I was being punished for leaving an abusive relationship. I threw myself into working out more intensely, using the gym as both stress relief and a way to feel some sense of control in a situation where I had none. That's where I met Casey. She was at my gym regularly. I'd noticed her before, strong, confident, clearly serious about her training. I found out through a casual gym conversation that she was an MMA fighter, trained professionally and competed in local circuits. We became friends first, would spot each other during workouts, would chat between sets, built a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and shared interest in fitness. Casey was different from other women I'd met recently, grounded, self-assured. Didn't seem like someone who'd scare easily or back down from confrontation. After several weeks of friendship, things began to shift toward something more. We'd started having coffee after workouts, would text throughout the day. The friendship was developing into the early stages of dating. I was cautious because I didn't want to get invested just to have Jennifer sabotage another potential relationship. But Casey seemed different. Then Casey received anonymous messages. Messages from an unknown number warned her to stay away from me, saying I was still taken, that she should back off or face consequences. When she told me about this, I felt my heart sink. Here we go again. Jennifer had discovered I was interested in someone and was starting her usual pattern of threats and intimidation. Casey's reaction wasn't fear. It was anger on my behalf, determination that Jennifer needed to be stopped rather than accommodated. A week later, Jennifer tried to confront Casey physically. She showed up at our gym during an evening when she knew we'd both be there, walked directly toward Casey with obvious confrontational intent. I saw it happening, felt panic rising. I didn't want Casey to get dragged into Jennifer's insanity, so I started moving to intervene. But Casey didn't need intervention. She stood her ground calmly. She didn't back away or look intimidated, just maintained steady eye contact and a relaxed posture, communicating that she wasn't afraid. Jennifer tried her usual tactics, getting into personal space, making veiled threats, and trying to establish dominance through intimidation. Casey didn't budge, just looked at Jennifer with this expression of complete unconcern, like Jennifer was an annoying inconvenience rather than an actual threat. The confrontation lasted maybe 2 minutes. Jennifer realized quickly that her tactics weren't working, that Casey wasn't going to run away scared like the previous women, that she couldn't physically intimidate someone with actual combat training. Jennifer left looking frustrated and uncertain. Probably for the first time since starting her stalking campaign, she'd encountered someone she couldn't control or scare away. That gym confrontation was the turning point. Casey was angry now, telling me we were going to end this properly. That Jennifer had been allowed to terrorize me for too long because previous responses had been passive. We compiled everything, every threatening message across multiple women, screenshots from fake accounts, records of harassment attempts, the police report I'd filed months earlier, witness statements from women Jennifer had targeted. Casey reached out to the women I wanted to have something going with and several others, convincing them to provide written accounts. Casey's testimony about the gym confrontation, my testimony about the relationship, and Jennifer's behavior since the breakup. We took everything to an attorney. The attorney reviewed the evidence and said we had a strong case, that the documented pattern of harassment across multiple victims, the escalation to physical confrontation, the months of stalking behavior, all of it painted a clear picture that would be taken seriously by a judge. We filed for a permanent restraining order against Jennifer, submitted all the compiled evidence, and requested a hearing date. About 3 weeks later, we went to court. I testified first, explained the relationship history, the emotional abuse during our 2 years together, my decision to end things, Jennifer's refusal to accept the breakup. I detailed the months of harassment, the fake accounts, the showing up at locations, the threats to women I dated, and the systematic campaign to isolate me socially and romantically. Casey testified next, described receiving the threatening messages. Her investigation connected them to Jennifer, the physical confrontation at the gym, her observations of how Jennifer's behavior had affected me. As someone with no prior connection to the situation, Casey was a credible witness. Her testimony carried weight that mine alone might not have. Jennifer testified in her own defense, was defensive and erratic, tried to claim I was exaggerating, that she'd just been trying to protect me from women who weren't right for me, that she still cared about me and was looking out for my best interests, tried to gaslight, claiming I'd been leading her on, that I'd never clearly ended things, that she thought we were working things out. The judge saw through it immediately and recognized the difference between Jennifer's frantic defensiveness and our calm, documented presentation of the facts. The first two women I wanted to have something with had provided written statements that were submitted as evidence. Other women who'd been threatened provided statements. The pattern was undeniable. The judge issued a permanent restraining order. Jennifer was prohibited from contacting me directly or indirectly. She couldn't approach me physically, contact anyone I was involved with, or come within 500 feet of my residence, workplace, or gym. Violation of the order would result in immediate arrest and criminal charges. Jennifer tried to argue. The judge shut her down, made clear that the evidence was overwhelming and the order was final. Walking out of that courthouse felt like breathing freely for the first time in over a year, like a massive weight had lifted off my chest. The relief was immediate, but peace returned gradually. Jennifer obeyed the restraining order, probably because she finally understood there would be real consequences if she didn't. No more fake accounts trying to contact me. No more showing up at places I frequented. No more harassment of women I was interested in. My social circle began rebuilding slowly. Friends who distanced themselves felt safe reconnecting. Women I met understood through mutual friends that the crazy ex situation had been legally resolved. My relationship with Casey deepened naturally, without the constant stress of Jennifer's interference. We continued dating seriously, built something healthy and balanced, based on mutual respect and genuine connection. About 6 months after the restraining order was issued, Casey and I moved in together. Looking back now, since I first ended that relationship with Jennifer, I understand everything more clearly. I learned that leaving an abusive relationship is often just the beginning rather than the end. That Jennifer's abuse had transformed after the breakup into stalking and harassment that had followed me into every new relationship attempt. I learned that the system isn't equipped to handle emotional and social abuse the way it handles physical violence. The police often don't take stalking seriously until it escalates to physical danger. Getting protection requires documenting patterns rather than individual incidents. I learned that abusers rely on victims and their new partners being too scared or too isolated to fight back effectively. That Jennifer's campaign had worked on the first set of ladies I wanted to date because they were alone in facing her threats. That it had failed with Casey because Casey wasn't alone. We fought back together with documentation and legal action. I learned that having someone strong beside you makes all the difference. That Casey's refusal to be intimidated, her strategic approach to gathering evidence, her willingness to testify, all of it had been essential to finally ending Jennifer's harassment. Most importantly, I learned that you can't negotiate with or appease an abusive ex who won't let go. All my attempts to ignore Jennifer or avoid confrontation had just enabled her to continue. That only legal consequences with real teeth had finally stopped her behavior. Some people might think I was weak for not stopping Jennifer sooner, and that I should have been more aggressive in pursuing legal action from the beginning. But those people don't understand how paralyzing it is to be stalked and harassed, how exhausting it is to constantly watch over your shoulder, how demoralizing it is to watch potential relationships destroyed by someone you're trying to escape. I'd done my best with the understanding and resources I had at each stage, and I tried blocking, ignoring, and filing police reports. I had only learned through painful experience that systematic documentation and legal action were necessary. I don't regret the timeline, just grateful I eventually found an adequate response. And grateful beyond measure for Casey, for her strength when I'd felt helpless, for her refusal to back down when others had, for standing beside me and fighting back when I'd been fighting alone for too long. Jennifer tried to make sure no other woman could have me, tried to keep me isolated and alone as punishment for leaving her. Instead, she pushed me toward someone strong enough to stand beside me and fight back. Someone who saw Jennifer's threats as a challenge rather than a reason to run. Jennifer gone, and I'm finally completely free. That's all I ever wanted, and all I deserve, and I finally have it.